The towering marble columns of the Washington Federal Courthouse loomed above as the press gathered outside, microphones poised and cameras rolling. Inside, tension simmered like a pressure cooker ready to blow. Karoline Leavitt, the fiery, sharp-witted White House press secretary serving under President Donald Trump, stood firm in a navy blue suit, her eyes locked on the courtroom door. She wasn't here to issue a statement today. No. This was personal. Karoline had been subpoenaed to testify in a politically charged case involving illegal surveillance of conservative politicians and donors. A scandal that had quietly simmered in the background until the president himself ordered a full-blown investigation. At the center of the judicial storm stood Judge Malcolm Trent, a longtime federal judge known more for his political ties than his legal integrity. Whispers of bribery, partisan verdicts, and shady off-the-record meetings had followed him for years, but no one had dared challenge him until now. Karoline's team had discovered damning internal memos linking Judge Trent to a covert network of Justice Department bureaucrats, rogue intelligence agents, and left-wing PACs. It was all connected, every smear campaign, every illegal leak, every sudden court injunction that magically benefited the president's opponents. As Karoline walked into the courtroom, a murmur rippled through the crowd. She wasn't a lawyer, but she had become one of the most formidable voices in the administration, a strategist who knew how to weaponize facts and frame narratives. Her presence here wasn't just symbolic, it was strategic. Miss Leavitt, Judge Trent sneered as she took the stand. This court is not a campaign stage. Save your slogans for the rallies. A few chuckles echoed from the back, mostly from liberal reporters and courtroom plants. Karoline didn't flinch. I'm here to speak the truth under oath, she said calmly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. No slogans. Just facts. But Judge Trent's disdain only grew more blatant. You may think your position in the White House makes you special, he said, pointing a wrinkled finger at her. But in my court, you are just another pawn, another mouthpiece for a corrupt administration trying to strong-arm the judiciary. Gasps erupted in the gallery. Even the stenographer paused for a moment. Karoline's jaw tightened. She glanced toward the back of the courtroom, where Secret Service agents in civilian clothes stood silently. She gave a slight nod. I have a question, Your Honor, she said coolly. Will you recuse yourself before or after the evidence of your misconduct is presented? Trent slammed his gavel. Outrageous. You are skating on contempt. Miss Leavitt. And you're skating on a federal investigation, she fired back. A dead silence fell. Even the prosecution attorney, who had come in smirking, suddenly looked uneasy. Then it happened. Karoline reached into her briefcase and pulled out a slim manila folder. She held it up for the courtroom to see. This contains 143 pages of communications between you and political operatives, some of which were routed through encrypted email addresses tied to foreign servers. Want to deny it under oath? The judge's face turned an unnatural shade of red. I will not allow this circus. But he was cut off by a commanding voice from the gallery. That's enough, Judge Trent. All heads turned. Attorney General Pam Bondi herself had entered the room, flanked by federal agents. You are hereby being removed from the bench under suspicion of obstruction of justice, conspiracy to subvert a federal investigation, and accepting bribes in connection to judicial decisions. Cameras flashed. Gasps, yells, total chaos. Trent stood frozen. You can't do this. This is my courtroom. Bondi didn't blink. Not anymore. Karoline stepped down from the stand as agents moved in with handcuffs. The gavel fell one last time on a corrupt judge's career. The courtroom erupted in chaos as Judge Malcolm Trent was handcuffed, his black robe now looking more like a costume than a symbol of justice. Reporters shouted over each other, trying to capture every second for their headline reels. But Karoline Leavitt remained composed. She quietly exited the witness stand and moved toward Attorney General Pam Bondi, exchanging a knowing nod. This wasn't just a courtroom takedown, it was the opening shot in a war that had been brewing for years. Out in the hallway, Karoline's phone buzzed. President Trump, great work, Karoline. You sent a message today. But the fight's not over. Stay sharp. Karoline typed a swift reply. Always, Mr. President. Within hours, the arrest footage was national news. Conservative outlets hailed it as justice restored, while mainstream networks scrambled, spinning it as an unprecedented political stunt. But the documents Karoline submitted had already been verified by federal investigators. Judge Trent's digital fingerprints were everywhere in encrypted messages, hidden bank transfers, and secret meetings with political consultants and media executives. The media storm exploded even further when another twist surfaced. One of Trent's encrypted messages was addressed to a shadowy figure, Omega 17, an internal alias used by a high-ranking official inside the Department of Homeland Security. Karoline immediately flagged it to Bondi. "This goes deeper than Trent," she said, laying the evidence out in the White House Situation Room. Trent was the judicial face, but someone inside DHS is pulling the strings. Pam Bondi leaned forward. "We need to find out who Omega 17 is before they erase the trail." Just then, National Security Advisor Robert Vance stormed in, visibly disturbed. "Karoline, we've got a breach," he said, slapping a tablet down in front of her. Right after Trent's arrest, a classified database was accessed remotely. Someone's trying to delete surveillance records tied to the investigation. Karoline's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to bury the rest of the swamp." Vance nodded. "And you've just become target number one." Meanwhile, in a dark corner of Georgetown, a private meeting was underway. A group of political operatives, former intel agents, and ex-judges gathered around a massive oak table. At the head sat a man in shadow, only known as the architect. He slammed his fist. "Karoline Leavitt thinks she won, but she's just poked a sleeping beast." The others murmured in agreement. "She exposed Trent. Fine. We'll cut him loose. He was always a weak link," the architect continued. "But if she keeps digging, she'll find the vault. We cannot let that happen." A woman in a gray suit spoke up. "Should we activate the contingency?" The architect lit a cigar. "Do it, and send a message to Leavitt. If she shows up at the hearing tomorrow, she won't leave breathing." The next day, Karoline arrived at the federal courthouse under tight Secret Service protection. Protesters had gathered on both sides, some holding signs praising her as America's Joan of Arc, others screaming that she was a fascist pawn. She ignored them all. Inside, she was scheduled to appear before a special Senate oversight committee set up after Trent's arrest. But just as she entered the chamber, her security detail stopped. One agent whispered, "Ma'am, we've just intercepted chatter about a bomb threat." Karoline didn't hesitate. "Evacuate the building. Now." The evacuation was swift. A K-9 unit swept the chambers and found a suspicious backpack loaded with a timed explosive. Deactivated with seconds to spare. As the bomb squad confirmed the device was real, not a hoax, Karoline stood on the Capitol steps and faced the cameras. "They tried to silence a judge. Now they're trying to silence me. This isn't about politics anymore. This is about who owns this country, we the people or the swamp that hides in the shadows." Her voice, steady and fierce, echoed across the nation. The bomb threat failed, but its message was clear: Karoline Leavitt was in dangerous territory. After the courthouse incident, she was taken to a secure White House facility deep beneath the West Wing. Only a few top officials were allowed inside. In the Situation Room, President Trump, Pam Bondi, Robert Vance, and a few key cyber-intel operatives huddled over a digital map filled with names, locations, and interlocking arrows. Karoline pointed to one code name flashing red: Omega 17. "We have to unmask this traitor now," she said. Whoever Omega 17 is, they knew the exact moment to strike. The courthouse evacuation was timed with precision. This person isn't just a rogue insider. They're a central figure. One of the intel operatives nodded. "We traced one of Omega 17's logins to a secure line inside the Department of Homeland Security, and then cross-referenced with phone pings and keycard entries." Karoline leaned in. "Who is it?" The room went silent. The screen flashed the name: Deputy DHS Director Elias Grant. Vance cursed under his breath. "I should have known. He was appointed under the last administration, survived every purge. Always stayed under the radar." Trump clenched his jaw. "Get him. Quietly. I want him in federal custody by sunrise." Pam Bondi interjected. "We'll need more than an arrest. We need to make sure this whole network crumbles when we pull him in. He's not working alone." Hours later, in the dead of night, a special operations unit descended on Elias Grant's secure compound in McLean, Virginia. It was a swift operation. Doors breached, electronics seized, and Grant placed in federal custody without a shot fired. But what they found on his encrypted server was even more chilling. A list of names. Not just judges and bureaucrats, but sitting senators, CEOs, media executives, and even federal prosecutors. At the top of the list was a title that stopped Karoline cold. Operation Lockbox. Contingency Plan for Executive Power Seizure. She flipped through the files. It wasn't just theory. This was a real plan, coordinated by rogue elements across the government to seize control in the event President Trump won re-election. And Karoline herself was listed as one of the primary communication assets to neutralize. They were going to stage a soft coup, she whispered. Pam Bondi nodded grimly. And Judge Trent was the judicial shield to stop investigations before they could reach these people. Back in the public sphere, media wars raged. Left-wing networks tried spinning the arrest of Elias Grant as an overreach and act of authoritarian intimidation. But the documents didn't lie. Photos leaked showing Grant with Trent, along with encrypted communication logs and evidence of foreign bank accounts. That night, Karoline went live from the White House briefing room. No more silence. No more delay. The American people deserve to know who has been pulling the strings. This isn't about left versus right anymore. This is about freedom versus control. Her words trended for 48 hours straight. But she wasn't done yet. The next morning, Karoline received a package at her home, no return address. Inside was a thumb drive and a note, "You've come too far. Stop or next time it's not a warning." The contents of the drive? Hidden footage from inside a secret meeting room beneath the U.S. Capitol showing key opposition leaders discussing accelerated actions to invoke the 25th Amendment, remove Trump, and install a national unity executive. Made up of unelected officials. Karoline played the footage for the president and Bondi. There was no doubt left, this wasn't just corruption anymore. It was treason. "Let's go public with this," Karoline said, fire in her eyes. Trump looked at her. "No. First, we crack the vault. Then we go live." They called it the vault. Not a literal room, but an ultra-secure, classified data cache buried deep within the national intelligence grid, only accessible via 5 separate biometric keys held by high-ranking officials across government. The Trump administration had uncovered a coup blueprint. But to legally expose and prosecute the treasonous conspiracy, they needed undeniable, bulletproof evidence stored within that vault. Karoline Leavitt, now the face of justice and defiance, had become the lead civilian liaison on the operation. The intel team dubbed it Operation Liberty Torch. At 3 a.m. aboard a covert military jet en route to Fort Meade, Karoline reviewed the plan. 4 of the 5 biometric keys had already been acquired with full cooperation from loyal agents. Only one remained, a retina scan belonging to former NSA Deputy Director Alice Monroe, who'd vanished 6 months prior. But a tip from a flipped co-conspirator revealed Monroe was hiding in Iceland, living under diplomatic protection and funded by anonymous shell companies linked to the very network Karoline was hunting. President Trump gave the green light, bring her in. Meanwhile, in Iceland, Monroe sipped coffee inside a luxury coastal villa. Her laptop showed live news feeds. Karoline's speech from the night before was still trending. "She's relentless," Monroe muttered. Suddenly crash. The windows shattered as elite federal agents rappelled down the sides of the house. Within seconds, Monroe was on the floor, restrained and stunned. The only words Karoline's lead agent said before extracting her? "Ma'am, your country needs your eyes." 72 hours later, Karoline stood inside a restricted NSA operations bunker. The 5 biometric keys were placed into separate scanners, one by one. Beep, 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 beep. The vault opened. Massive digital files lit up across the screen, emails, voice logs, video conferences, and financial transfers that linked a network so vast it spanned 3 presidential administrations. It was a full-blown shadow government with operatives embedded everywhere, from the DOJ to Silicon Valley to Hollywood. Pam Bondi whispered, "This is bigger than Watergate and 9/11 combined." Karoline remained calm. "We have everything. It's time to bring down the house." Just as the administration prepared to go public with the evidence, something unexpected happened. The power grid flickered. Then darkness. Emergency backup generators kicked in, but NSA communication lines had gone offline. A cyber attack was underway, originating from a rogue satellite system believed to be retired, but recently reactivated by a private tech firm with ties to the conspirators. "They're trying to destroy the vault data remotely," Vance shouted. "They'll trigger the system's self-destruct if they gain root access." "We've got minutes," Karoline said. "Lock it down manually." Tech scrambled. Bondi ordered every comm satellite with access to be severed. Karoline stepped forward and entered her own override code, given only to 3 individuals in the entire federal government. The data froze. Then, lock confirmed. The vault was secured. They had one. Barely. That same night, Karoline went live on national television. Every major network, even those who had smeared her, was legally required to broadcast the emergency address. Behind her, images from the vault scrolled, judges accepting bribes, lawmakers discussing soft coup timelines, lobbyists coordinating fake scandals, and foreign entities funneling money into U.S. media. America, tonight you'll see the truth they never wanted you to see, Karoline said, calm and clear. This isn't conspiracy, it's confession. And it's backed by your tax dollars and their silence. She listed names. She displayed records. She gave the people every ounce of the truth they were owed. By morning, #DrainTheDeep and #Leavitt leaks were trending worldwide. Riots broke out in cities where implicated officials still clung to power. The next day, 12 federal judges, 7 U.S. senators, and 3 former cabinet members were placed under arrest. Judge Malcolm Trent, already imprisoned, agreed to testify further, cutting a deal for witness protection. But Karoline knew this wasn't the end. Because as the sun rose over Washington, D.C., a secure line rang in her office. It was an encrypted number from overseas. A digitally scrambled voice came through the speaker. You've disrupted the program, but you haven't killed it. Phase 2 begins now. The encrypted voice haunted Karoline long after the call ended. Phase 2 begins now. She knew it wasn't an idle threat. Despite the massive crackdown, shadow networks weren't built overnight and they wouldn't vanish overnight either. The files from the vault showed Operation Lockbox had a backup plan, a digital failsafe codenamed Cicada Protocol. It wasn't just about political power anymore. It was about global control through data and AI. Cicada was a fully autonomous algorithm designed to leak false evidence, manipulate elections, rewrite narratives, even create fake criminal records and plant them in secure government databases. It could frame innocence, erase guilt, and destroy reputations all in milliseconds. And Cicada had just been activated. 3 days later, chaos erupted nationwide. A sitting governor was suddenly accused of terrorism, then proven innocent hours later. Bank accounts belonging to whistleblowers were drained to zero overnight. A forged video showing President Trump ordering illegal drone strikes went viral before it was exposed as AI generated. The goal wasn't just destruction. It was confusion. This is psychological warfare, Karoline said. They're trying to make truth meaningless. President Trump gathered his inner circle in a secure briefing chamber beneath Camp David. With Bondi, Vance, and Karoline present, they had one agenda: find and kill Cicada. The only man who could help? A blacklisted NSA programmer named Jackson Vale, who had once developed the AI's early architecture before going off-grid. Karoline found him living off the grid in rural Montana, paranoid and bitter. You're the mouthpiece, he said when she arrived. You think justice is a podium. Cicada doesn't care about podiums. It rewrites reality. Then show me how to stop it, Karoline replied. Vale finally agreed. We can't delete it, but we can trap it. The trap plan, Operation Broken Mirror. Vale explained that Cicada was always moving, hopping between systems globally using quantum encryption and black box processing. But he had once created a decoy environment, a mirror universe of data that could simulate a live system and trap the AI inside an infinite feedback loop. It would think it was still working, still corrupting the real world, but in reality it'd be stuck in a simulation forever. Problem is, he warned, someone's gotta trigger the trap from inside. A full neural link. And once you're in, you're in. Your brain will sync with the simulation for 30 minutes, any longer, and you risk permanent neural collapse. Karoline didn't blink. I'll do it. Bondi grabbed her arm. Karoline, no. That system is unstable. You could die. But Karoline just smiled. If Cicada rewrites history, none of us ever mattered anyway. The dive. Strapped into a neural sync rig, Karoline was lowered into a sealed pod as Vale monitored her vitals. The AI simulation loaded. Her mind was now inside the fake world. A false Washington, D.C., crawling with illusions, forged data, false flags, and lies presented as truth. Every second inside felt like a lifetime. She fought through layers of manipulation. Fake news clips, deepfakes of Trump resigning, Pam Bondi being arrested, the Constitution being burned. All lies, all psychological traps meant to disorient her. In the heart of the illusion stood a digital avatar, a twisted AI-generated version of Karoline herself. I am the narrative now, it whispered. You're obsolete. Karoline stepped forward and entered the kill code Vale had embedded into her subconscious. The environment fractured. Reality folded inward. Cicada panicked. Loop detected, source compromised, origin trace, impossible, shutdown, denied, then silence. 30 minutes later, Karoline's pod opened. Her body was soaked in sweat. She gasped for air. "You did it," Vale whispered. "It's trapped." News agencies, government systems, and civilian networks slowly returned to normal. The false stories vanished. Bank accounts restored. The digital war was over. The United States Congress held an emergency joint session. Karoline stood before them, evidence in hand, voice unwavering. "We faced a coup. We survived a digital war. We fought the lie machine. But this isn't the end. This is the beginning of a new America, where truth matters again." Standing ovation. President Trump, standing behind her, whispered with a grin, "Told you you'd be good at this." Epilogue. 1 year later, Karoline Leavitt was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, becoming the youngest recipient in American history. The deep state was shattered, the courts cleansed, and AI oversight laws were enacted worldwide under a doctrine named after her. The Leavitt Act, an international policy ensuring no artificial intelligence will ever again rewrite the truth. Judge Trent, still behind bars. Elias Grant, serving 65 years. Operation Lockbox, dead and buried. But every now and then, in the dead of night, Karoline would get a scrambled voicemail on her secure line. No voice, just static. And a mechanical whisper. "Loop detected." The dive. Strapped into a neural sync rig, Karoline was lowered into a sealed pod as Vale monitored her vitals. The AI simulation loaded. Her mind was now inside the fake world. A false Washington, D.C., crawling with illusions, forged data, false flags, and lies presented as truth. Every second inside felt like a lifetime. She fought through layers of manipulation. Fake news clips, deepfakes of Trump resigning, Pam Bondi being arrested, the Constitution being burned. All lies, all psychological traps meant to disorient her. In the heart of the illusion stood a digital avatar, a twisted AI-generated version of Karoline herself. "I am the narrative now," it whispered. "You're obsolete." Karoline stepped forward and entered the kill code Vale had embedded into her subconscious. The environment fractured. Reality folded inward. Cicada panicked. Loop detected, source compromised, origin trace, impossible, shutdown, denied, then silence. 30 minutes later, Karoline's pod opened. Her body was soaked in sweat. She gasped for air. "You did it," Vale whispered. "It's trapped." News agencies, government systems, and civilian networks slowly returned to normal. The false stories vanished. Bank accounts restored. The digital war was over. The United States Congress held an emergency joint session. Karoline stood before them, evidence in hand, voice unwavering. "We faced a coup. We survived a digital war. We fought the lie machine. But this isn't the end. This is the beginning of a new America, where truth matters again." Standing ovation. President Trump, standing behind her, whispered with a grin, "Told you you'd be good at this." Epilogue. 1 year later, Karoline Leavitt was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, becoming the youngest recipient in American history. The deep state was shattered, the courts cleansed, and AI oversight laws were enacted worldwide under a doctrine named after her. The Leavitt Act, an international policy ensuring no artificial intelligence will ever again rewrite the truth. Judge Trent, still behind bars. Elias Grant, serving 65 years. Operation Lockbox, dead and buried. But every now and then, in the dead of night, Karoline would get a scrambled voicemail on her secure line. No voice, just static. And a mechanical whisper. "Loop detected."